My name is Simone Sterling. I am 34 years old, and I am a forensic accountant living in Atlanta, Georgia. For 7 years, I was the invisible backbone of a dynasty I built with my own blood, sweat, and credit score. I thought marriage was a partnership, a sacred covenant where two people cover each other's blind spots. But what I discovered in the recovery room of Mount Sinai Hospital in the fall of 2024 did not just break my heart, it surgically removed my capacity for forgiveness. My husband asked me to donate my kidney to his dying mother to prove my loyalty. I agreed. 2 days later, he showed up at the hospital. Not with flowers, not with a thank you card. He showed up with a woman in a red dress and divorce papers. If you are watching this now, prepare yourself, because what I'm about to share is the anatomy of a perfect betrayal. If you have ever felt used, discarded, or invisible in your own home, please hit that like button. It helps other women find this story. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss the truth, and please tell me in the comments where you are watching from. The first thing I registered was the sound. Beep, beep, beep. The rhythmic mechanical pulse of the heart monitor was the only thing anchoring me to reality. Then came the pain. It was not a dull ache. It was a sharp, jagged fire tearing through my lower right side, screaming at me that a part of my body was missing. My mouth tasted like copper and old anesthesia. I blinked my eyes open, trying to focus on the sterile white ceiling of the VIP recovery suite at Mount Sinai. I had done it. I had actually done it. I had given my left kidney to Lucille Sterling, the woman who had spent 7 years criticizing my cooking, my hair, and my career, but who was still my husband's mother. I tried to shift my weight, but a fresh wave of agony pinned me to the mattress. My hand fumbled blindly across the stiff hospital sheets, searching for the call button, searching for water, searching for Andre. My fingers did not find the call button. They landed on something cold and heavy resting right on my chest. It was a thick manila envelope, the weight of it pressed down on my lungs, making it hard to breathe. I forced my eyes to focus. The door to my suite hissed open. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding, expecting to see Andre's worried face, expecting him to rush over and hold my hand, expecting him to tell me I was brave. Andre did walk in, but he was not looking at me. He was adjusting the cuffs of his custom navy suit, the one I bought him for our 5th anniversary. And he was not alone. Walking beside him was a woman who looked like she had just stepped off a runway. She was wearing a blood-red dress that clung to every curve, a dress so tight it looked like a second skin. Her hair was a cascading waterfall of expensive weave, and her heels clicked against the linoleum floor with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. It was Chantel. I knew her face from Instagram. Andre had told me she was just a real estate broker helping him close a deal in Buckhead. Seeing her here in my recovery room while I lay in a hospital gown with a catheter bag hanging off the side of the bed felt like a hallucination. Andre finally looked at me. His eyes were not filled with love or gratitude. They were flat, cold, businesslike. He looked at me the way he looked at a property he was about to liquidate. "The lawyer said you were awake," Andre said. His voice was smooth, devoid of any emotion. He pointed a manicured finger at the envelope on my chest. "Sign these. Mom has her kidney. Now I need my freedom. And Chantel here, she does not like to wait." I stared at him, unable to process the words. My brain was still foggy from the drugs, but the cruelty cut straight through the haze. "You want a divorce?" I rasped, my voice sounding like sandpaper. "Now. Today. I just gave your mother an organ, Andre." Andre let out a short, dismissive laugh. He walked over to the window, looking out at the New York skyline, refusing to even make eye contact with me. "Do not make this dramatic, Simone. You and I both know this marriage has been dead for years. You are boring. You are obsessed with your spreadsheets and your little audits. You possess zero charisma. Look at you. You are practically a corpse. Chantel is life. Chantel is the future of the Sterling brand. Besides, you did your duty. You served your purpose. Consider the kidney a severance package. My purpose." The words echoed in my head. I wanted to scream. I wanted to sit up and throw the pitcher of water at his head, but I could not move. I was the one who paid off his $60,000 gambling debt when we were dating. I was the one who stayed up until 4 in the morning fixing the tax returns for his failing real estate company so he would not go to federal prison. I was the one who built the image of the successful Black entrepreneur he paraded around on social media. But I was the mechanic in the basement, and he wanted a hood ornament. Before I could find the breath to respond, the double doors swung open again. A nurse pushed a wheelchair into the room. Sitting in it looking flushed and surprisingly vibrant was Lucille, my mother-in-law, the recipient of the organ that was currently throbbing with phantom pain in my side. I felt a surge of foolish hope. Surely Lucille would say something. Surely she would slap her son for doing this. Surely she would acknowledge that I had just saved her life. Lucille did not even turn her head toward my bed. Her eyes locked instantly on Chantel. She reached out her hand, the hand that was now warm with blood filtered by my kidney, and grasped Chantel's fingers. "Oh, honey, look at you," Lucille cooed, her voice strong. "That red is your color. You look like royalty. This is the kind of energy we need in this family. High vibration. Beautiful." Chantel giggled, a sound that grated on my nerves like broken glass. "Thank you, Mama Lucille. We brought you fruit. Andre said the doctor said you are doing amazing." Lucille finally turned her wheelchair slightly toward me. She did not smile. She looked at me with the same indifference one might show a used syringe or a discarded bandage. "Well," she said, looking over her glasses, "you are awake. The doctor said the transplant was a success. My body accepted it immediately. I suppose I should thank you for the spare part, Simone. But honestly, it was the least you could do after keeping my son in a miserable marriage for so long. God works in mysterious ways. He used you to bless me so I could be here for Andre and his new chapter. Hopefully God will bless you too somewhere else, far away from us." I felt tears prick my eyes, hot and humiliating. It was not just the pain of the surgery anymore, it was the absolute erasure of my humanity. They were talking about me like I was a vending machine that had dispensed a product and was now just taking up space. Just then, the door opened a third time. It was Courtney, my brother-in-law's wife. Courtney was a petite white woman with a blonde bob and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She was carrying a basket of organic pears. She breezed past my bed, not even pausing to see if I was conscious, and went straight to Chantel, kissing her on the cheek. "So good to see you, Chantel," Courtney chirped. "I love that bag. Is it the new Birkin?" She turned to look at me, her expression shifting to one of pity that felt more like mockery. "Oh, Simone, you look rough. But you know, I was reading this article the other day about how Black women are just naturally built for trauma. You guys have this incredible pain tolerance. It is genetic or something, right? Resilient. That is the word. So I bet you do not even need the heavy-duty meds. Your kidney must be tough, just like you. It will probably last Lucille forever." She turned back to Andre, ignoring my gasp of disbelief. "Andre, baby, the hospital administrator is outside. He says there is a billing issue with the VIP suite. Since Simone is not technically family anymore, the insurance policy you have for executives does not cover her stay. And Chantel needs to rest her feet. Those heels look killer. Maybe we should move Simone to the general recovery ward down the hall. It is perfectly adequate, and Chantel could really use this bed to nap while we wait for Mom's discharge papers." Andre nodded as if this was the most logical suggestion in the world. "You are right, Courtney. Why pay premium rates for a non-asset?" He pressed the call button. When the nurse arrived, a young woman who looked uncomfortable avoiding my gaze, Andre did not hesitate. "Nurse, please transfer Ms. Mitchell." He emphasized my maiden name to the general ward. "We need this room for family members." Ms. Mitchell. In the span of 10 minutes, I had lost my kidney, my husband, my home, and now even my name. The nurse looked at me apologetically, but she began unlocking the wheels of my bed. "Wait," I whispered, my voice trembling. "This suite. I paid for the deposit on this suite. It is on my American Express." Andre leaned down his cologne, suffocating me the same scent I had bought him for Christmas. "And who pays the bill for that American Express, Simone?" "My company. The company you are leaving today. Consider the deposit a donation, just like the kidney. Now sign the papers, or I will have security escort you out in a wheelchair instead of a bed." He tossed a pen onto the blanket. It rolled down and touched my hand. I looked at the pen. Then I looked at the three of them. Andre checking his watch, Chantel examining her nails, Lucille basking in her new life. They thought I was broken. They thought I was just a body they had harvested. They thought the silence from my side of the bed was defeat. They were wrong. As the nurse began to push my bed toward the door, away from the sunlight and the flowers, and into the noise of the hallway, I closed my hand around the pen. I did not sign the papers. I slipped the pen under my pillow. The pain in my side was blinding as the bed bumped over the threshold, but for the first time since I woke up, my mind was clear. They had taken my flesh. They had taken my love. But they had forgotten one thing. I was a forensic accountant. I knew where every single dollar in the Sterling Empire was buried. And as the elevator doors closed on their laughing faces, I made a vow. By the time I was done with them, they would wish I had died on that operating table. Because a woman who has been cut open while she is still awake learns very quickly how to hold a knife. Lying in that hospital bed with the anesthesia wearing off, I realized that the surgery did not happen today. The incision on my side was fresh, but the dissection of my life began exactly 3 months ago. It started not in a doctor's office, but in the front pew of the Greater Ebenezer Baptist Church. To understand why I said yes, you have to understand who Andre was to the world versus who he was to me. On Instagram, Andre Sterling was a real estate mogul. He posted photos of construction sites he did not own and captioned them with hashtags like generational wealth and empire building. He drove a Mercedes G-Wagon that I paid the lease on. He wore custom suits that I put on my credit card. I was the silent partner, the invisible wallet. I was the forensic accountant who spent her days tracking hidden assets for Fortune 500 companies and her nights balancing the checkbook of a husband who treated overdraft fees like business expenses. I knew the math did not add up, but I was addicted to the potential of him. I thought if I just supported him enough one day, the man he pretended to be would become the man he actually was. That Sunday 3 months ago was the beginning of the end. The church was packed. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and the sound of fans beating against the heat. Andre had insisted we sit in the front row. He was wearing a white suit looking like an angel. I was wearing a simple navy dress, trying to make myself small. When the pastor opened the floor for testimonies, Andre stood up. He did not just stand, he performed. He walked to the pulpit, tears already streaming down his face. He grabbed the microphone and his voice cracked perfectly. He told the congregation about his mother, Lucille. He spoke about her failing kidneys, about the dialysis that was draining the life from the matriarch of the Sterling family. He painted a picture of a saint who raised him on prayer and sacrifice. Then he turned to me. The entire church turned with him. 500 pairs of eyes burned into my skin. Andre walked down the steps and knelt in front of me, right there on the red carpet of the sanctuary. He held the microphone out so everyone could hear. Simone, baby, he sobbed loud enough for the back row to hear. You are the only match. The doctors said you are the miracle we have been praying for. I know it is a lot to ask, but God put you in our lives for a reason. If you love me, if you love this family, you will save her. Please, baby, prove your loyalty. Do not let the world say that Andre Sterling's wife has a heart of stone. The organ music swelled. The choir started humming softly. People were shouting hallelujah and amen. An older deaconess behind me put a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Be a Proverbs 31 woman, baby. Give him his blessing." I looked at Andre. I saw the desperation in his eyes, but looking back now, I realize it was not desperation for his mother's life. It was desperation for the narrative. He had cornered me. If I said no, I was not just refusing a surgery. I was rejecting God. I was humiliating him in front of his audience. I was the villain in his hero story. My throat felt tight, like hands were closing around it. I nodded, just a small nod. And the church erupted in applause. Andre hugged me, burying his face in my neck, but he whispered something that the microphone did not catch. He whispered, "Thank you for not embarrassing me." That was the social contract signed in public. But the private betrayal happened in the dark quiet of our bedroom just 2 weeks before the surgery. We were lying in bed. Andre was asleep or pretending to be. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. It lit up the room with a harsh blue glow. Usually I respected his privacy. I was not the jealous type. My job was literally to find secrets hidden in numbers, and I knew that if you went looking for trouble, you would always find it. But that night, something made me reach for it. Maybe it was the fear of the upcoming surgery. Maybe it was a gut feeling. The message was from a contact saved only as broker. No name, no emoji, just broker. The text read, "She is getting nervous about the timeline. Make sure she is locked in. I need my cut by Friday." My heart hammered against my ribs. Locked in. My cut. It sounded like a drug deal. Or worse. I shook Andre awake. I shoved the phone in his face. "Who is this, Andre? Who is broker? And why are they talking about me being locked in?" Andre blinked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He did not panic. That was the thing about Andre. He never panicked. He just shifted reality until it fit his needs. He took the phone from my hand and sighed, looking at me with disappointed eyes. "Simone, really? You are going through my phone now, after everything I am going through with Mom." "I'm not playing games, Andre," I snapped, sitting up. "Who is that?" He let out a long, suffering breath. "That is the transplant coordinator, Simone, the independent broker who is helping us expedite the paperwork with the hospital board. You know how hard it is to get a slot for the operating room. She helps navigate the system. She is asking for her consulting fee. That is what she means by her cut. And she wants to make sure you are locked in for the surgery date because if you back out, we lose the slot and Mom dies. Are you happy now?" He looked at me with such pity. "You are so paranoid, Simone. It is your job, I know. You spend all day looking for fraud, so you think everyone is a criminal. Even your husband, even the people trying to save my mother's life. You are letting your anxiety ruin a beautiful sacrifice. If you do not trust me, then who do you trust?" I sank back onto the pillows. It sounded plausible. Just plausible enough. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because the alternative was that the man I was about to give a vital organ to was selling me out. I let him wrap his arms around me. I let him kiss my forehead. I let him whisper that I was his queen and his savior. I apologized. I actually apologized to him for catching him. I told myself I was just stressed. I told myself that marriage was about faith. But as I drifted off to sleep that night, listening to his steady breathing, I pushed down the small voice in the back of my head. The voice that sounded like a forensic accountant. The voice that said numbers do not lie, but people do. And the math on this surgery was all wrong. I should have listened to the math. Instead, I walked into the operating room with my eyes wide shut, convinced I was saving a life when I was really just signing a blank check. The transition from the VIP suite to the general ward was not just a change of scenery. It was a demotion in humanity. The air in the penthouse suite had smelled of fresh orchids and expensive HVAC filters. Down here on the 4th floor, the air smelled of industrial bleach, boiled cabbage, and sickness. The nurses' station was loud buzzing with the chaos of understaffed shifts and overflowing charts. I was pushed into a room with 3 other beds separated only by thin beige curtains that did little to block out the sounds of coughing and groaning. My new bed was hard, the mattress lumpy, and the sheets felt like sandpaper against my sensitive skin. The nurse, a kind but exhausted woman, checked my vitals quickly and told me the doctor would make rounds in the morning. Then she left me alone. Alone. The word echoed in the cramped space. I stared at the ceiling tile above me, counting the water stains. My hand drifted down to my side, hovering over the bandages. Beneath layers of gauze and tape, there was a void, a physical emptiness where an organ used to be. But the emptiness in my chest was far worse. I had given a piece of myself to save a woman who had never offered me anything but backhanded compliments and passive-aggressive prayers. And I had done it for a man who had just walked out on me with a woman wearing a dress that cost more than my first car. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. My fingers trembled not from cold, but from a rage that was starting to boil over, masking the pain. I did not call my sister. I did not call my best friend. I dialed the one number I knew would answer on the first ring, regardless of the time. Patricia Reynolds. Patricia was 62 years old, a shark in a Chanel suit, and the best contract lawyer in Atlanta. She had been my mentor when I first started in forensic accounting, teaching me that the devil was not in the details, he was in the footnotes. "Hello, Simone." Patricia's voice was crisp, sharp, and devoid of the pity I dreaded hearing. "I assume since you are calling me and not your husband, the surgery is over and the other shoe has dropped." She knew. Patricia always knew. When I had first told her about Andre's request 3 months ago, she had looked at me over the rim of her glasses and asked if I was a fool or a martyr. I had told her I was a wife. She had scoffed and told me to be a strategist instead. It happened. "Patricia," I whispered, my voice raspy from the intubation tube. "They took the kidney, and then Andre handed me divorce papers in the recovery room. He brought her with him, the woman from Instagram, Chantel." There was a silence on the other end of the line, a heavy, pregnant silence. Then I heard the scratching of a fountain pen on paper. "Typical," Patricia muttered. "Men like Andre Sterling do not change Simone. They just find new audiences for their performance. I told you he was liquidating you. He viewed you as a depreciating asset, and he harvested the salvage value before writing you off." I closed my eyes, tears leaking out despite my best efforts. "You were right. You were right about everything." "Stop crying, Simone," Patricia snapped, but her tone was not unkind. "Tears are for people who do not have options. You have options. Did you sign the papers he gave you?" "No," I said. I put the pen under my pillow. "Good. Now listen to me. Do you remember the conversation we had the night before you checked into the hospital? Do you remember what we drafted?" I took a shaky breath. I remembered. It was the only thing keeping me from screaming. 2 weeks ago, after I found the text message about the broker on Andre's phone, I had gone to Patricia's office. I had sat in her leather chair shaking with fear and told her I suspected Andre was up to something. I told her about the pressure, the church service, the way he was parading his mother's illness. Patricia had pulled a file from her drawer. She called it the Doomsday Clause. I remember I told her now, gripping the phone tight. "Is it active?" "It became active the moment the anesthesia hit your bloodstream," Patricia confirmed. "I filed the addendum with the Hospital Ethics Board and the donor registry 72 hours ago. It is a little-known legal instrument called a conditional gift deed, based on the premise of spousal reliance. Essentially, you agreed to donate the organ not out of altruism, but as part of a marital contract for the continued care and maintenance of the family unit." I let out a breath, the ghost of a smile touching my lips. Which means, Patricia continued, her voice dripping with satisfaction, that the donation was contingent on the continuation of the marriage and the financial stability of the recipient's household provided by the primary earner. You. Since Andre has filed for divorce immediately post-operation, he has essentially breached the contract of the donation. Now, obviously, we cannot ask for the kidney back. The law does not allow for repossession of human tissue. I knew that. I did not want the kidney back. I wanted justice. But Patricia said, and I could hear the smile in her voice, "We can revoke the financial sponsorship. You signed a guarantor form for Lucille's anti-rejection medication and her post-operative care, remember. Andre does not have health insurance that covers this level of transplant maintenance. He was relying on your corporate policy and your personal guarantee to the hospital billing department." I closed my eyes, visualizing the spreadsheet in my head. Lucille's drugs cost $5,000 a month out of pocket. The surgery copay was $50,000. The hospital stay was another $20,000. Without my signature backing those charges, the bill would go straight to Andre. "Execute it," I said, my voice finding its strength. "Pull the guarantee. Notify the hospital billing department that due to the divorce filing, I am no longer the financial guarantor for Lucille Sterling." "Consider it done," Patricia said. "By tomorrow morning, Andre is going to find out that his freedom costs a lot more than he calculated. Rest now, Simone. You are going to need your strength for the deposition." I hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of calm. I was not just a victim lying in a hospital bed. I was a player in the game. I had moved my piece. Now I just had to wait for Andre to realize he was in check. The phone buzzed in my hand again, startling me. I looked at the screen. It was a text message from Andre. I opened it, bracing myself. The message was short, brutal, and devoid of any of the charm he used to fake. "I hope you are enjoying the general ward. It suits you. By the way, I need you to have your things out of the penthouse by Friday. I am having the decorators come in to redo the space for Chantel. She is allergic to dust and your old clutter. The smart lock codes have already been changed, so do not try to sneak in. I will leave your boxes in the lobby. Do not make a scene." I stared at the glowing words. Evicted. Discarded. Replaced. He was treating me like a tenant who had missed rent, not the woman who had just saved his mother's life. He thought he had all the power. He thought because he had the penthouse and the girl and the new kidney that he had won. He had no idea that he had just triggered the war. Friday, I whispered to the empty room. I looked at the date on my phone. Today was Tuesday. I had 3 days to heal enough to walk, 3 days to prepare, 3 days before I stood in front of that building and watched his world crumble. I typed a reply, my fingers flying across the screen. I did not beg. I did not plead. I did not ask him how he could be so cruel. I wrote 3 words. See you Friday. I set the phone down and pressed the button to adjust my bed. The motor whirred loudly, lifting me up. The pain in my side screamed, but I welcomed it. It was fuel. I was not going to die in this general ward. I was going to survive. And on Friday, Andre Sterling was going to learn that the woman he called boring was the most dangerous person he had ever met, because he had taken everything from me, which meant I had absolutely nothing left to lose. I signed the discharge papers against medical advice less than an hour after sending that text. The nurse looked at me like I was insane. She told me my incision was a ticking time bomb and that walking around was inviting a hernia or an infection. I did not care. The pain in my body was loud, but the alarm bells ringing in my head were deafening. I needed my laptop. That laptop was not just a piece of technology. It was the external hard drive of my brain. It contained the encrypted backups of the Sterling Group's true ledger. It had the emails Andre thought he had deleted. It had the wire transfer receipts he thought were buried under shell companies. If Andre was moving Chantel in, he was also moving my history out. And if he found that laptop before I did, he would drill a hole through the hard drive and toss it into the Chattahoochee River. I called an Uber because I could not drive. Every pothole on Peachtree Street felt like the surgeon was reaching back inside me and twisting the knife. I wrapped my arms around my stomach, holding the pillow I had stolen from the hospital tight against my incision. The driver kept looking at me in the rearview mirror, asking if I needed to go to the emergency room. I told him to just drive. When the car pulled up to the Sterling Heights, the building loomed over me like a tombstone. It was a glass and steel monolith that I had negotiated for, and I had financed. We lived in the penthouse on the 42nd floor. The view cost more than most people earned in a decade. I used to stand on that balcony looking at the city lights, telling myself it was worth the stress. Now looking up at it all, I felt was nausea. I limped into the lobby. The air conditioning hit me first cool and smelling of white tea and bamboo. It was a scent I had chosen for the building's signature fragrance. It used to smell like success. Today, it smelled like a funeral home. I made my way toward the elevators, my hand shaking as I reached into my purse for my key fob. I just needed to get up there. Grab the laptop from the safe in my office. Grab the jewelry my grandmother left me. Get out. I pressed the fob against the sensor. Nothing happened. I pressed it again harder. A small red light blinked at me. Access denied. My heart began to race faster than my injured body could handle. I tried a third time, jamming the plastic against the reader. Ms. Sterling. The voice came from the concierge desk. I turned around. It was Marcus, the head of security. Marcus was a good man, a giant of a man with a gentle spirit. 2 years ago, when his daughter needed braces and his insurance denied the claim, I had written him a personal check for $5,000 and told him to call it a bonus. I saw the shame in his eyes before he even finished walking toward me. Marcus. I said, my voice tight with pain. My key is not working. The system must be down. Can you override it for me? I just need to get to my apartment. Marcus stopped 3 feet away from me. He did not look at my face. He looked at his polished shoes. He was wringing his hands together, a nervous habit I had never seen him do before. I am sorry, Ms. Mitchell, he said. He used my maiden name, the name Andre had used at the hospital. I felt the blood drain from my face. Marcus, what is going on? Mr. Sterling called down an hour ago. Marcus said, his voice barely a whisper. He updated the building's access protocol. He said there was a security breach. He removed your biometric data and deactivated your fobs. He said, Marcus swallowed hard, unable to finish the sentence. He said what, Marcus? Look at me. Marcus finally looked up. His eyes were watery. He said you are no longer a resident here. He said you are trespassing. He told me if you showed up I was supposed to call the police. Trespassing. I laughed, a dry, hollow sound that hurt my ribs. I paid the mortgage on this building, Marcus. You know that. You have seen the checks. I know Marcus said, and I could see he wanted to help. I know Ms. Simone. But the deed is in the LLC's name, and he is the registered agent of the LLC. Technically, he is the landlord, and he has barred you from the premises. I swayed on my feet, the edges of my vision going black. He had locked me out. He had actually locked me out of the home I built while my stitches were still bleeding. But surely, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, surely he cannot keep my things, my clothes, my work computer, my mother's jewelry. That is illegal, Marcus. That is theft. Marcus took a step back and pointed toward the service elevator tucked away in the corner of the lobby, the corner where the cleaning crews took out the trash. He had the movers bring some things down, Marcus said, his voice trembling. He said this was everything. I turned my head. There, stacked against the marble wall like refuse, were 6 large black garbage bags. Not boxes, not suitcases. Hefty bags, the kind you use for yard trimmings and kitchen slop. I walked over to them, my legs feeling like lead. I fell to my knees, ignoring the searing pain in my side, and ripped open the first bag. It was my clothes, my silk blouses, my tailored suits, my cashmere sweaters, all wadded up and stuffed in together. I saw a bottle of foundation that had broken and spilled, forcing liquid beige makeup all over a white blazer I had worn to my college graduation. I ripped open the second bag. It was my books, my finance textbooks, my novels, my journals. Their covers were bent, their pages torn. I tore into the third bag, praying to find the silver laptop case. Instead, I found shattered glass. I pulled out a frame. It was the picture of my parents on their wedding day. The glass was pulverized. The photo was scratched. Next to it was my mother's Bible, the leather cover ripped. He had not just packed me up. He had tried to destroy me. He had thrown my life into garbage bags and left them in the lobby for the neighbors to see, for the staff to see. I dug frantically through the other bags, shoes, underwear, bathroom toiletries, but no laptop, no safe, no hard drive. Where is the rest? Marcus, I screamed, turning back to him. Where is the safe? Where is the gray MacBook? Marcus shook his head, tears now running down his face. That is all he sent down, Ms. Simone. He said, anything left in the unit is company property. Company property. The laptop. He had kept the laptop. He knew. I sat there on the cold marble floor, surrounded by the wreckage of my life. A woman in a hospital gown and a trench coat clutching a broken picture frame amidst piles of trash bags. People were walking by. Residents I knew, neighbors I had hosted for dinner parties. They looked away. They hurried past, clutching their designer bags, pretending they did not see the woman who had just been erased. Marcus took a step toward me, holding out a hand. Ms. Simone, please, you cannot stay here. If he sees you on the security cameras, he will make me call the cops. And I do not want to see you go to jail in your condition. Please, let me help you to a taxi. I looked at Marcus. I looked at the elevator that led to the penthouse, where Chantel was probably walking around in my robe, drinking wine out of my crystal glasses. I looked at the trash bags that held 34 years of memories. Andre had kept the laptop because he thought it was his leverage. He thought that by keeping the evidence, he was safe. But he had made a fatal miscalculation. He forgot that I did not need the physical laptop to destroy him. I was the one who created the passwords. I was the one who set up the cloud servers. And I was the one who knew that the real evidence wasn't just on that hard drive. It was in the backup server I had installed at my sister's house 3 years ago for safekeeping. I wiped the tears from my face. I stood up, using the wall for support. The pain was still there, but it was different now. It was no longer the pain of a victim. It was the pain of a soldier. I do not need a taxi, Marcus. I said, my voice cold and steady. I need you to do me one favor. When you see Andre, tell him I got the message. Tell him the trash has been taken out. I grabbed the bag with my parents' picture. I left the clothes. I left the shoes. I walked out of the Sterling Heights, leaving the expensive fabrics and the broken glass on the floor. I walked out into the humid Atlanta air with nothing but the hospital band on my wrist and the absolute certainty that when I came back to this building, I would not be asking for permission to enter. I would be coming to foreclose. 1 week. That is exactly 168 hours since they sliced through my abdominal muscles and removed a vital organ from my body. In medical terms, I was still in the acute recovery phase. My surgeon had told me to stay in bed to keep the incision dry and to avoid lifting anything heavier than a milk jug. But here I was, standing in the foyer of the Gilded Lily, one of Atlanta's most exclusive event spaces, wearing a black trench coat over a loose silk dress that concealed the drainage tube still taped to my side. I was not here for the champagne. I was not here for the crab cakes. I was here because when I had inventoried the trash bags Andre left in the lobby, I realized the most dangerous item I owned was missing: my encrypted USB drive. It was not in the bags. It was not in the shattered remains of my office. That drive contained the forensic audit of the Sterling Group's last 5 years. It was the only thing that proved I was the architect of Andre's wealth. And more importantly, it was the only thing that proved his tax returns were a work of fiction. If Andre had found it, he would have destroyed it. But Andre was lazy. He likely threw it in the portable safe he carried to important events, the safe he used to show off cash to potential investors. The double doors to the ballroom were open. Inside the room was bathed in golden light. A banner hung from the ceiling in shimmering letters that read, "Lucille Sterling, the Rebirth." It was a celebration of life for a woman who had spent years telling me I was not good enough to carry her family name. Now she was alive because of my tissue, and I was standing in the shadows watching strangers drink wine paid for by the credit card I had just canceled. I took a step forward. The pain in my side flared hot and sharp, a reminder that my body was still screaming even if my voice was silent. I saw them. They were at the head table. Lucille was sitting on a velvet throne, looking healthier than she had in a decade. Her skin was glowing. She was laughing at something the mayor of Atlanta was whispering in her ear. Next to her was Andre. He looked like the king of the world in a tuxedo that fit him perfectly. And next to him, with her hand resting possessively on his knee, was Chantel. She was wearing white, a floor-length gown that looked suspiciously like a wedding dress. She was beaming, playing the role of the doting daughter-in-law perfectly. The sight made bile rise in my throat. I had spent nights sleeping in a chair next to Lucille's hospital bed, wiping her brow, holding her hand while she moaned in pain. Chantel had spent those nights in my bed. I watched as Andre stood up. He tapped a crystal glass with a silver spoon. The room went silent. 200 heads turned toward him. "Thank you all for coming," Andre said, his voice booming with that charismatic warmth that had fooled me for 7 years. "Tonight is not just a party. It is a testimony. We were told Mom would not make it to Christmas. The doctors said her kidneys were shutting down, and without a miracle, we would be planning a funeral instead of a gala." He paused, wiping a fake tear from his eye. The room murmured in sympathy. "But God is good," Andre continued, raising his hands. "God saw our faithfulness, and He sent us an angel." My heart hammered against my ribs. For a split second, a foolish, fractured part of me thought he was going to tell the truth. I thought he was going to say my name. I thought he was going to admit that his discarded wife was the reason his mother was breathing. Andre turned. He did not look at the door where I was standing. He turned to Chantel. "I want to introduce you all to the woman who made this happen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My fiancée, Chantel. When the doctors gave up, Chantel did not. She got on the phone. She used her connections. She found the specialist in New York who performed the surgery. She stayed up nights praying with me. She is the reason my mother is here today. Ladies and gentlemen, the future Mrs. Sterling." The room erupted. People were standing up, clapping, whistling. Chantel stood up and did a little wave, blushing modestly, as if she had actually sacrificed something other than her time. The erasure was total. He had not just taken my kidney. He had taken my sacrifice and draped it over his mistress like a fur coat. He had rewritten history in real time. I felt a coldness spread through my veins that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I walked into the room. I did not run. I did not scream. I walked with the slow, deliberate pace of a woman who was holding her intestines together with medical tape. The clicking of my flat shoes on the marble floor was lost under the applause, but as I moved deeper into the room, people started to notice. The clapping near the back died down, then the middle, then the front. A ripple of silence spread through the ballroom until the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator units. Andre froze. His glass was halfway to his mouth. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not because he thought I would hurt him physically, but because I was a stain on his perfect white tablecloth. I was the ghost at the feast. Simone Andre said, his voice dropping the performance tone. "What are you doing here? Security was supposed to—" I walked right up to the head table. Up close, I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. "I am not here for the toast, Andre," I said, my voice steady, loud enough for the first 3 tables to hear. "I am here for my property." "You forgot something in the trash bags you left in the lobby." Chantel looked at me with wide, innocent eyes. "Oh my God, is this her? The ex-wife?" She leaned into Andre, clutching his arm. "Andre, she looks deranged. Is she going to hurt us?" Lucille put down her fork. She looked at me with pure disgust. "Simone, have you no dignity? We are celebrating life here. Why must you always bring this dark cloud with you? You signed the papers. Go away." I looked at Lucille. The woman was drinking champagne filtered by my kidney. "I want the portable safe, Andre," I said, ignoring his mother. "The gray one. The one you keep in your briefcase. It has my personal hard drive in it. Give it to me and I will leave." Andre laughed. It was a nervous sound. "You are delusional. Anything in that apartment was marital property. And since you abandoned the marriage, it belongs to me. There is no hard drive, Simone, just like there is no space for you here." I reached for the safe, which was sitting on the floor by his feet. I knew he kept it close. Andre kicked it away. "Don't touch that." That was when Courtney stood up. She had been sitting on the other side of Lucille, watching the scene with a glass of wine in her hand. She smoothed down her dress and walked around the table to stand between me and Andre. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on the slight bulge of the bandage under my coat. "Simone, seriously," Courtney said, her voice dripping with that fake southern sweetness that cut deeper than a knife. "You are making a scene. Look around. These are important people. You are embarrassing yourself." She took a step closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear, but the venom was clear. "Look, I get it. You are bitter. You thought buying a kidney would buy you love, but it does not work that way, sweetie. It is a gift. You gave it away. So stop acting like an Indian giver. It is really tacky to try and reclaim a gift once it has been opened, especially when the recipient is clearly doing so much better without you." The phrase hit me like a physical blow. Indian giver. Tacky. She was reducing the mutilation of my body to a social faux pas. I looked at Courtney. Then I looked at Andre, who was signaling to 2 large men in dark suits by the door. "You think I want the kidney back?" I asked, my voice rising. "You think I want to be part of this family? I would rather die on dialysis than sit at this table with you people. I want my work. I want the years of my life I wasted building this lie." "Security," Andre shouted, pointing at me. "Remove this woman. She is trespassing. She is mentally unstable." The 2 guards grabbed my arms. One of them squeezed right over my incision. I gasped, my knees buckling as pain shot through my nervous system like lightning. "Easy, man," I gasped. "I just had surgery. They did not care." They dragged me backward. My heels skidded on the floor. I watched as Andre adjusted his jacket, smoothed his tie, and turned back to the crowd. "I apologize, everyone," Andre said, his voice smooth again. "Mental illness is a tragedy. We pray for her. Now please, let's get back to the celebration." DJ hit the music. Music blasted through the speakers, drowning out my protests. As I was hauled out of the double doors, I saw Chantel lean over and whisper something in Andre's ear. He laughed and kissed her cheek. They threw me out onto the sidewalk. I landed hard on my hands and knees. The pavement was wet and cold. My side was throbbing so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. I reached inside my coat and touched the bandage. It was warm, wet. I pulled my hand back. It was covered in blood. The stitches had popped. I sat there on the concrete, shivering as the music from the party thumped through the walls. They had the USB. They had the narrative. They had the power. But as I looked at the blood on my hand, something inside me shifted. Andre thought the USB was his insurance policy. He thought that by keeping it, he could keep me quiet. He did not realize that by keeping it, he had just committed a federal crime. He was in possession of stolen property that contained evidence of tax fraud. I wiped the blood on my coat. I did not cry. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I dialed a number I had never used before. It was the direct line to the IRS whistleblower office. I did not need the USB to start the fire. I just needed to tell them where to look for the smoke. Happy rebirth. Lucille, I whispered to the closed doors. Enjoy the party, because tomorrow the hangover is going to be terminal. The pavement outside the Gilded Lily was cold and gritty against my cheek. I lay there for a moment, stunned not by the fall, but by the absolute silence that followed the slamming of the heavy double doors. Inside there was music and laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. Outside there was just the hum of streetlights and the ragged sound of my own breathing. I tried to push myself up, but my arms shook violently. A sharp tearing sensation ripped through my right side, hotter and more intense than the surgery itself. I gasped, clutching my coat around me, but it was too late. I could feel the warmth spreading, wet and sticky, soaking through the silk of my dress and onto the concrete. The stitches had given way. A valet parking attendant rushed over, his eyes wide with panic. "Ma'am, are you okay? Do you need me to call an ambulance?" He looked young, terrified that I might die on his watch. I wanted to tell him to call my husband. I wanted to tell him to go inside and get the man who promised to love me in sickness and in health. But that man was currently raising a toast to his mistress. I grit my teeth and nodded. "Call them," I whispered. The ride to the county hospital was a blur of sirens and potholes. I did not go back to Mount Sinai. I did not have the insurance or the energy to fight for a bed there. I ended up at Grady Memorial, the kind of place where you wait 6 hours to see a doctor, and where the air smells of desperation and antiseptic. They wheeled me into a trauma bay, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry hornets. A doctor with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his scrubs cut open my expensive dress without hesitation. He peeled back the blood-soaked bandages and whistled low. "You really did a number on yourself," he said, threading a needle. "Who let you out of bed this soon post-op? You have popped 3 internal sutures, and the external incision is completely dehiscenced. This is going to leave a nasty scar." I lay there staring at the ceiling tile, counting the cracks, while he stitched me back up. He did not use the delicate plastic surgery techniques they used at the private hospital. He used staples. I could feel each one biting into my skin, a metal zipper closing the hole where I used to be whole. Click, click, click. Each sound was a punctuation mark on the end of my marriage. When he was done, he left me behind a thin curtain to rest. I was alone. No flowers, no get-well cards, just the rhythmic beeping of a monitor and the sounds of a gunshot victim groaning in the next bay. I pulled the thin, scratchy hospital blanket up to my chin and shivered. But it wasn't from the cold. It was from the sudden, terrifying clarity that washed over me. I pulled the gown aside and looked at my stomach. The scar was ugly now, angry, red, raised. It ran across my abdomen like a borderline. For weeks I had told myself that this scar was a badge of honor. I told myself it was proof of my love, proof of my capacity to give. I had romanticized my own mutilation. I thought if I gave enough, if I bled enough, Andre would finally see me. I thought if I cut off a piece of myself to save his mother, I would finally earn my place at the table. But looking at that jagged line under the harsh hospital lights, I finally saw the truth. It wasn't a badge of honor. It was a receipt. It was a permanent record of how cheap I had sold myself. They hadn't just taken a kidney. A kidney is just a filter, a piece of meat. You can live without it. What they had taken was my dignity. They had taken my self-respect. They had manipulated my faith, my loyalty, and my love, and turned them into commodities. They harvested me. To them, I wasn't a wife or a daughter-in-law. I was livestock. Andre didn't kick me out of the party because I was making a scene. He kicked me out because I was a reminder of the debt he never intended to pay. He wanted the organ, but he didn't want the donor. He wanted the money, but he didn't want the accountant. A tear slid down my temple and pooled in my ear. I wiped it away aggressively. That was the last tear. I was done crying over people who wouldn't shed a drop of blood for me. I was done being the victim in the trauma bay. The doctor said the scar would be nasty. Good. I wanted it to be nasty. I wanted it to be a reminder every single day that I survived the extraction. I sat up, ignoring the pull of the fresh staples. My head swam, but I forced myself to focus. I reached for my purse, which the nurse had hung on the back of a chair. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped. I pulled out my phone. It was cracked from the fall, but it still worked. I scrolled past the missed calls from my worried sister. I scrolled past the texts from friends asking if I was okay. I stopped at Patricia's number. It was 3 a.m. I didn't care. I hit dial. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy but alert. "Simone, is everything okay? I heard you were at the hospital." "I am fine." "Patricia," I said. My voice sounded different to my own ears. It was deeper, harder. It sounded like the voice of a woman who had just walked through fire and decided she liked the heat. "I am at Grady. They stitched me back up." "Do you want me to come get you?" Patricia asked. "No," I said. "I want you to go to your office." There was a pause. "Now, Simone, it is 3 a.m. "I know what time it is," I said. "It is time to stop playing defense. I tried to get the USB drive back tonight. Andre had security throw me into the street." Patricia gasped. "He did not." "He did." And while I was lying on the pavement, bleeding through my dress, I realized something. I do not need the USB drive. I built the system, Patricia. I know the back doors. I know where the bodies are buried because I dug the graves. "Simone, what are you saying?" Patricia asked, her tone shifting from concern to professional curiosity. "I am saying that I am done protecting him," I said. "I am done being the silent partner. I want to trigger the clause we discussed last year, the one we set up in case of a hostile takeover." "You mean Protocol Venom?" Patricia asked softly. "Simone, that is the nuclear option. If we activate that, we are not just auditing him. We are scorching the earth. That protocol exposes everything. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the tax evasion schemes you set up to protect the family assets. If you release that, you implicate yourself too. You could lose your license." I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "Patricia, look at me. I have lost my husband. I have lost my home. I have lost a kidney. Do you really think I care about a CPA license? But the exposure," Patricia warned. "I am a whistleblower," I cut her off. "I am coming forward voluntarily to correct the record. I will get immunity. Andre will get federal prison." There was a long silence on the line. I could hear Patricia breathing. I could hear the gears in her mind turning, calculating the risk and the reward. "Protocol Venom," she repeated. "That involves freezing all liquid assets immediately. It involves flagging every transaction over $10,000 as suspicious activity to the IRS. It involves sending the unredacted ledgers to the district attorney." "Do it," I said. And Simone, Patricia added, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It means canceling the life insurance policies, the ones that secure the loans for the Sterling Group. If we pull those, the banks will call in the debts by noon tomorrow." "Do it," I said again. "He will be destitute, Simone. He will not just be broke. He will be in debt for millions." I looked down at the staples in my stomach. I traced the line of the incision with my fingertip. "He took a part of me that I can never get back," I said. "It is only fair that I take everything he has. Start with the construction loans, then move to the charitable foundation. I want every single dollar frozen by the time he wakes up next to his new fiancée. I want his credit cards to decline when he tries to buy her breakfast. I want him to feel exactly what I'm feeling right now, empty." I heard the sound of a laptop opening on the other end of the line, the clicking of keys. "Okay," Patricia said. "I am logging in now, initiating Protocol Venom." "Simone, are you sure?" Once I hit enter, there is no going back. I closed my eyes. I saw Andre's face at the party. I saw him laughing. I saw him kicking the safe away. I saw him erasing me. "Hit enter," I said. I heard the sharp click of a key. "It is done," Patricia said. "The system is flagging the accounts now. By sunrise, the Sterling Empire is going to be nothing but a crime scene." "Thank you, Patricia," I said. I hung up the phone and lay back against the pillow. The pain in my side was still there, throbbing in time with my heartbeat. But for the first time in months, the pain in my heart was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just a scorned woman anymore. I was the karma he never saw coming. I closed my eyes and waited for the sun to come up. It was going to be a beautiful day. The sun was coming up over the Atlanta skyline, casting a pale gray light through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Patricia's conference room. I had not slept. The staples in my stomach were burning, a constant reminder of the physical toll of the last week, but my mind was operating at a temperature that felt like absolute zero. I was not a wife anymore. I was not a victim. I was a forensic accountant, and I was looking at the most chaotic set of financial records I had ever seen. Patricia had given me access to her firm's proprietary background check software. It was the kind of system that did not just Google someone's name. It crawled through credit headers, property deeds, court records, and the dark corners of the internet where people hid their true selves. I sat there with a mug of cold coffee, staring at the 3 monitors I had set up. On the left screen was Andre's frantic activity over the last 48 hours. On the right screen was the prospectus for his new venture called the Sterling Horizon. And in the center screen was the woman in the white dress, Chantel. Andre had introduced her to the world as Chantel Dubois, the daughter of a Creole shipping magnate from New Orleans. He claimed she came from generational wealth, the kind of money that was quiet and polite. He told the investors that her family was backing his new development project, which gave him the credibility he desperately needed. But as I looked at the data in front of me, the story began to unravel like a cheap sweater. There was no shipping magnate named Dubois in New Orleans. There was no trust fund. There was no inheritance. I typed in the Social Security number associated with the lease on the luxury condo Andre had rented for her. The system churned for a moment and then spat out a name that was definitely not Chantel Dubois. Her real name was Tiffany Miller. She was 24 years old, and she was not from the French Quarter. She was from a small town in the Florida Panhandle. Her credit score was 520. She had 3 evictions on her record and a misdemeanor for shoplifting at a Sephora in Miami. But what was more interesting was her employment history, or rather, the lack of it. Tiffany Miller had not filed a tax return in 4 years. I dug deeper. If she had no job and no family money, how was she wearing a $10,000 dress and carrying a Birkin bag? I ran her known aliases through a database of high-end escort services and arrangement websites. It took less than 10 minutes to find her profile on a site called Gilded Cage. There she was. The same face, the same body, but wearing a lot less clothing. Her profile name was Creole Queen. Her bio described her as an actress and companion, available for travel events and long-term role play. Her rate was $5,000 a night or $20,000 for a full weekend. I sat back in the leather chair, my jaw tight. She was not a fiancée. She was an employee. Andre had not fallen in love. He had made a hire. I shifted my attention to the financial records I had pulled from Andre's cloud server before he locked me out. I searched for payments to Gilded Cage or any LLC associated with Tiffany Miller. Andre was sloppy, but he was not stupid enough to use his personal checking account. He would use a shell company. I traced a series of wire transfers from the Sterling Foundation, the charity that was supposed to be funding kidney research. There it was. Every Friday for the last 3 months, a transfer of $3,000 was sent to a company called Miller Consulting Group. The memo line read, Brand Ambassador Services. He was paying her a salary to play the role of the doting partner. He was renting a personality because he knew he could not sell his scam alone. I looked at the screen on the right. The Sterling Horizon. This was the end game. It was a massive commercial real estate project Andre was pitching to investors. He was claiming he had secured the land rights to a prime block in downtown Atlanta. He was asking for $50 million in seed capital. In the pitch deck, he used photos of his happy family. There was a picture of him holding hands with Lucille in her hospital bed. There was a picture of him and Chantel looking at blueprints. The narrative was perfect. The prodigal son saves his mother, finds true love, and builds a legacy. Investors love stability. They love a redemption arc. They were not just investing in a building, they were investing in the man. But I knew the truth. I pulled up the county land registry. The Sterling Group did not own the land for the Sterling Horizon. They did not even have an option to buy it. The land was owned by the city. Andre was selling shares in a building that he had absolutely no legal right to build. He was running a classic Ponzi scheme. He was using the money from new investors to pay for the lifestyle that attracted them. He was using the funds to pay for Chantel's clothes for Lucille's recovery party for the lease on the Gilded Lily. He was burning through cash at a rate of $50,000 a week just to keep up appearances. And he was using Chantel as the bait. He needed a rich fiancé to make the other rich people feel comfortable. If she was putting her family's money in, they would think it was safe to put their money in too. But her money did not exist. It was a hall of mirrors. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was not just about me anymore. It was not just about the kidney. Andre was about to destroy the lives of dozens of innocent people. Teachers, firefighters, retirees, people who trusted the Sterling name because I had spent 7 years keeping it clean. He was going to take their savings and funnel it into Tiffany Miller's shoe collection. I looked at the clock. It was 7 a.m. The markets would open in 2 hours. Andre had a breakfast meeting scheduled with the pension fund board for the Atlanta Teachers Union. I saw it on his calendar before I lost access. He was going to pitch them the Sterling Horizon. He was going to walk into that room with Chantel on his arm and ask them to sign over $5 million of retirement money. I grabbed my phone. I did not call the police. Not yet. The police would take too long. They would need warrants. They would need subpoenas. By the time they moved, the money would be gone. I needed to blow the cover off the operation right now. I needed to shatter the illusion. I opened my email. I drafted a message. I attached the screenshots of Tiffany Miller's escort profile. I attached the wire transfers from the charity account to her consulting firm. I attached the county records showing the land was not owned by Andre. I typed in the email addresses of every single member of the Teachers Union board. Then I added the local news tips line. Then I added the fraud division of the Securities and Exchange Commission. My finger hovered over the send button. I thought about the way Andre looked at me at the party, the way he let the security guards drag me out while I was bleeding. He thought I was powerless. He thought I was just a bitter ex-wife who could be silenced with a restraining order. He forgot that I was the one who taught him how to read a balance sheet. He forgot that in accounting, every debit must have a credit. I pressed send. The screen swooshed. The evidence was out. The secret was weaponized. I stood up and walked to the window looking down at the city. Somewhere in a penthouse uptown, Andre was probably tying his tie, looking in the mirror and telling himself he was a king. Chantel was probably putting on her makeup, getting ready to play the role of a lifetime. They had no idea that the script had just been rewritten. The audit had begun, and this time, the numbers were going to scream. The divorce court smelled like floor wax and failed promises. It was a sterile room with wood-paneled walls that had absorbed the anger of 1,000 broken marriages, but today the air felt particularly cold. I sat on the left side of the aisle wearing a navy blue suit that covered my stitches. My hands were folded on the table in front of me, perfectly still. Next to me, Patricia was arranging her files with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an amputation. On the other side of the aisle, Andre looked like he was posing for a magazine cover. He was wearing a gray Italian suit that I knew cost $4,000 because I was the one who paid the bill 3 months ago. He was whispering to his lawyer, a man named Harrison, who had a tan that was too orange and a smile that was too wide. They were laughing, actually laughing. Andre leaned back in his chair, checking his watch, probably counting the minutes until he could meet Chantel for lunch. He looked at me once, not with guilt, but with pity. It was the look you give a dog before you put it down. The judge, a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, called the court to order. She looked tired. She wanted this to be quick. Mr. Harrison stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. My client, Mr. Sterling, is a generous man. Despite Mrs. Sterling's erratic behavior at his mother's celebration of life and her unfortunate mental health episode last week, he wishes to resolve this matter amicably. We are prepared to offer a one-time humanitarian settlement of $20,000. $20,000. I did not flinch. I did not gasp. I just watched a fly buzz against the fluorescent light above Andre's head. $20,000 was less than the cost of the earrings he had bought Chantel for her birthday. It was an insult designed to provoke me. They wanted me to scream. They wanted me to cry about the kidney so they could paint me as the unstable, emotional ex-wife. Harrison continued. In exchange, we ask for a full non-disclosure agreement and a waiver of all future claims to the Sterling Group's assets. Mr. Sterling built this company with his own vision and blood. Mrs. Sterling was merely a supportive spouse, not a business partner. We believe this is more than fair given the short duration of the marriage. Andre nodded solemnly, playing the part of the benevolent king, throwing crumbs to the peasant. The judge looked at Patricia. Ms. Reynolds, do you have a counteroffer? Patricia stood up. She did not button her jacket. She did not smile. She picked up a single blue folder from the stack in front of her. We do not have a counteroffer, Your Honor. Patricia said, her voice soft, but carrying to every corner of the room. We have a correction. She walked to the bench and placed the folder in front of the judge. Then she walked over to the plaintiff's table and dropped a copy in front of Andre. The sound of the paper hitting the wood was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Harrison frowned, picking up the document. What is this? We are here to discuss the division of assets not read your client's diary. This, Patricia said, turning to face Andre, is a document titled Conditional Asset Donation and Financial Guarantor Agreement. It was signed by Mr. Sterling and myself as a witness exactly 48 hours before the transplant surgery. Andre rolled his eyes. Oh, please. We know about the kidney. You cannot put a price on an organ, Patricia. It is illegal to sell body parts in the United States. Your client gave a gift. It is over. Move on. Patricia smiled. It was a terrifying smile. You are absolutely right, Mr. Harrison. Under the National Organ Transplant Act, it is a felony to sell a human organ. My client knows this. She is a forensic accountant. She follows the law to the letter. She did not sell her kidney. She donated it freely. Patricia paused, letting the silence stretch until Andre shifted uncomfortably in his seat. However, Patricia continued, her voice hardening. While the organ itself was a gift, the medical infrastructure required to transplant it and maintain it was not. You see, Your Honor, Mr. Sterling has bad credit. Terrible credit, actually. When the hospital ran his financials 3 months ago, they refused to schedule the surgery. They knew he could not afford the $200,000 deductible. Nor could he afford the lifetime supply of anti-rejection medication that costs $5,000 a month. I watched Andre's face. The smirk was gone. He was blinking rapidly, trying to remember. So Patricia said, pacing slowly in front of his table, Simone stepped in. She did not just give her body. She gave her credit rating. She signed a guarantor agreement. She pledged her personal premarital assets to secure the loan that paid for the surgery. But because she is a smart woman, she added a rider to that agreement. Patricia pointed to paragraph 4 on the document in Andre's hand. Read it, Mr. Sterling. Out loud, please. Andre stared at the paper. His hands started to shake. I could see the sweat beading on his upper lip. I cannot read this legalese, he stammered. Read it, Patricia commanded, her voice cracking like a whip. Andre swallowed hard. The provision states that the financial guarantee is contingent upon the continued existence of the marital union. Should the marriage be dissolved due to the fault or filing of Mr. Sterling within 5 years of the procedure, the guarantee is immediately voided. He stopped. The room was deadly silent. Keep reading, Patricia said. Andre's voice was a whisper now. Upon voiding of the guarantee, all past, present, and future medical costs associated with the transplant revert to the primary beneficiary, Mr. Andre Sterling, as immediate callable debt. Harrison dropped the paper. He looked at Andre with horror. You signed this. Andre looked up, his eyes wild. I thought it was just the hospital admission forms. There were so many papers. She told me to sign so Mom could get the room. Patricia turned to the judge. Your Honor, simply put, my client insured the surgery. She acted as the bank, and just like any bank, she included a clause that says, if you default on the relationship, you default on the loan. Mr. Sterling filed for divorce 2 days after the surgery. That is a default. The judge adjusted her glasses, looking from the document to Andre. Ms. Reynolds, what is the total value of this debt? Patricia opened a spreadsheet. The surgery cost $400,000. The VIP suite was $50,000. The anti-rejection drugs for the estimated remaining 20 years of Lucille Sterling's life, calculated at current market rates plus inflation, come to $1.5 million. She looked at Andre. The total is approximately $2 million, and since the guarantee is voided as of the date of filing, that debt is now due immediately. Andre stood up, knocking his chair over. This is insanity. I do not have $2 million. You know I do not have that kind of money. That is unfortunate, Patricia said coolly, because the hospital billing department has already been notified. And since you are the sole owner of the Sterling Group, I imagine they will be looking at your company assets to satisfy the judgment. Andre turned to me. His face was a mask of panic and rage. Simone, you cannot do this. This is my mother. You are going to bankrupt me over a surgery you volunteered for. You are going to let them come after my business. I finally spoke. My voice was calm, steady, and cold as ice. I did not volunteer to be scammed, Andre. I volunteered to save a family member. You decided I was not family anymore. You decided I was a stranger. Well, strangers do not pay your bills. Harrison tried to intervene. Your Honor, this is a contract dispute, not a family law matter. We need time to review the validity of this signature. My client was under duress. The judge shook her head. The signature is notarized, Mr. Harrison, and frankly, the terms seem quite clear. If Mr. Sterling wanted to keep his financial guarantor, he should have kept his wife. Andre slammed his hand on the table. This is a trap. She planned this. She knew. She sat there and let me sign my life away. I stood up slowly, wincing slightly as my stitches pulled. I looked him dead in the eye. I protected myself, Andre. There is a difference. You spent 7 years spending money you did not earn and banking on loyalty you did not return. You thought because I was quiet I was stupid. You thought because I loved you I was weak. You forgot that my job is to catch people who think they can hide the truth in the numbers. I picked up my purse. The offer of $20,000 is rejected, I said to the room at large. We will be seeking full repayment of the medical debt plus legal fees. And Andre. He looked at me, his eyes red, his breathing shallow. Tell Lucille she might want to switch to the generic brand of medication, I said. The premium coverage just expired. I turned and walked out of the courtroom. Behind me, I heard Andre shouting at his lawyer. I heard the judge banging her gavel, but the sound I enjoyed the most was the sound of the air leaving the room. The absolute vacuum of a man realizing that the trap he thought he set for me had just snapped shut around his own neck. Patricia met me in the hallway. She looked at me and nodded, a small, respectful nod. That was brutal, she said. It was necessary, I replied. Patricia checked her phone. The hospital legal team just emailed. They are placing a lien on his accounts as we speak. He will be frozen out by noon. I walked toward the exit, the sunlight streaming in through the glass doors. I felt lighter. The debt was not mine anymore. The burden was not mine. I had given a kidney, but I had kept my soul. And now, Andre Sterling was going to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. You never bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand is the only one signing the checks. The courtroom doors swung shut behind me, but the air in the hallway felt electric. I walked to a bench near the elevators and sat down, not to rest, but to watch. I knew exactly what was about to happen. In the world of high-stakes, finance timing is everything. You do not just light a match and walk away. You stay to watch the structure burn so you can be sure nothing is left standing. I checked the time on my phone. It was 11:14 in the morning. At exactly 11:15, the automated servers at Global Fidelity Insurance were scheduled to process their daily fraud alerts. Andre thought the lawsuit regarding the conditional gift deed was his biggest problem. He thought owing me $2 million was the ceiling of his nightmare. He was wrong. That was just the floor. 3 days ago, while I was still recovering in the general ward, I had made a call to an old colleague named Sarah. Sarah was a senior risk assessor at Global Fidelity, the company that held the health insurance policy for the Sterling Group. I did not ask her for a favor. I simply asked her to cross-reference the financial disclosure forms Andre submitted to the transplant board against the actual tax returns I had just sent to the IRS. You see, to get bumped up the transplant priority list, Andre had to prove financial stability. He had to prove that the household could support the patient post-operation. He had submitted documents claiming the Sterling Group had $3 million in liquid reserves. He lied. The company had less than $50,000. In the insurance world, that is called fraudulent inducement, and it is the one sin insurance companies never forgive. At 11:16, Andre's phone buzzed in his hand. He was standing by the water fountain whispering furiously to his lawyer Harrison. He looked at the screen. I saw his eyebrows knit together in confusion. Then I saw his eyes widen. He tapped the screen frantically, scrolling down. The color drained from his face so fast, he looked like he was about to faint. He grabbed Harrison's arm, his fingers digging into the expensive fabric of the lawyer's suit. "What is it?" Harrison asked, his voice echoing slightly in the marble corridor. "They canceled it," Andre whispered. His voice was trembling. "They canceled the policy, retroactively." Harrison snatched the phone. I watched as he read the email. I knew exactly what it said. It was a notice of immediate policy termination due to material misrepresentation. But the kicker wasn't the cancellation. It was the clawback. When an insurance company proves fraud, they do not just stop paying. They demand a refund for every single dime they have already spent. Andre looked across the hallway and locked eyes with me. He didn't see a wife. He saw an executioner. He started walking toward me, his stride long and aggressive. Harrison tried to grab him, but Andre shook him off. "What did you do?" Andre screamed. The sound bounced off the high ceiling, stopping the other people in the hallway dead in their tracks. Security guards looked up, but they didn't move yet. I stayed seated. I crossed my legs, protecting the incision on my side. "I did nothing, Andre." I said, my voice calm and level. "The truth did the work. You lied on your application. You told them you were solvent. You told them you could afford the copays. The algorithm just caught up with you. You reported me," he shouted, looming over me. "You called them. Do you have any idea what this means?" I looked up at him. "I imagine it means you are now personally liable for the entire cost of the surgery. That is roughly $500,000, Andre, plus the $50,000 for the hospital stay. Oh, and the ambulance ride. That was another $2,000. It adds up fast, doesn't it?" Andre ran a hand over his face, pulling at his skin. He looked like a man drowning. "It is not just the surgery, Simone. It is the meds. Mom is at the pharmacy right now. She just texted me. They rejected the card. The pharmacist told her the authorization was revoked." I felt a twinge of something in my chest. Not guilt, but a recognition of the tragedy. Lucille was a difficult woman, but she was a pawn in Andre's game, just like I was. "Tacrolimus is expensive," I said, stating the fact coldly. "Without insurance, a 30-day supply of the name-brand anti-rejection drugs is about $5,000. And she needs mycophenolate too. That is another $1,000. She cannot miss a dose," Andre yelled, spit flying from his mouth. "If she misses a dose, her body will reject the kidney." "Your kidney. She could go into organ failure within 48 hours. You are killing her, Simone. You are murdering my mother to prove a point." I stood up then. The pain in my side flared, but I used it. I let it fuel the steel in my spine. I took a step toward him, forcing him to step back. "I am not killing her, Andre. You are. You gambled her life on a lie. You had the money. You had the profits from the Sterling Group. But instead of putting that money into a segregated account for your mother's health care like I told you to do, you spent it." I poked him in the chest hard. "You spent it on the lease for the Gilded Lily. You spent it on Chantel's condo. You spent it on the first-class tickets to Miami. You took the safety net I built for this family, and you turned it into a red carpet for your mistress. Do not you dare stand there and tell me I am the villain. I gave the organ. You were supposed to provide the maintenance. You broke the deal." Andre's phone rang again. It was a video call. The screen lit up with Lucille's face. He answered it, putting it on speaker, his hand shaking so bad the image blurred. Lucille's voice came through tinny and panicked. "Andre, why are they saying the card is declined?" "I am at the counter. People are staring. The pharmacist says I have to pay cash." It is $6,000, Andre. I do not have $6,000. I feel weak, Andre. My back hurts. I need my medicine. Andre stared at the phone. Mom, just tell them to run it again. There must be a mistake. There is no mistake, sir. The pharmacist's voice cut in, sharp and impatient. The insurer code says policy void. We cannot dispense this medication without payment. Do you want the generic? It is cheaper, but the absorption rate is different. The doctor prescribed the brand name for a reason. Give her the generic. Andre snapped. Just give her whatever costs the least. I will figure it out. He hung up. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw the boy he used to be. The boy who was scared of the dark, but then the mask of the narcissist slammed back into place. You will fix this, he hissed. You have savings. You have your inheritance from your father. Write a check. Fix this now, or I swear to God, Simone, I will destroy you. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh, a laugh of disbelief. You are threatening me with destruction while you are standing in the rubble of your own life, I asked. I do not have to lift a finger, Andre. The dominoes are already falling. I pointed to his phone. That was the pharmacy. Next, it will be the bank calling about the construction loan because the life insurance policy that secured it just got flagged too. Then it will be the leasing office at the Sterling Heights. Then the car dealership. I leaned in close so only he could hear. And do you know who is going to leave you first? It will not be the bank. It will be Chantel. Do you think she is going to stick around when she finds out she has to nurse a sick mother-in-law in a rented apartment because the penthouse is foreclosed? Do you think she is going to sell her Birkin bag to pay for Lucille's dialysis? Andre raised his hand. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me right there in the courthouse. Security took a step forward. Harrison grabbed Andre's arm and yanked him back. Do not do it, Andre Harrison warned. She is baiting you. If you touch her, you go to jail and your mother gets nothing. Andre lowered his hand, but his eyes were burning with hate. You are a monster, he whispered. I adjusted my coat. I am a mirror, Andre. I am just reflecting exactly what you gave me. Cold, hard indifference. I turned to walk away. I could hear him breathing heavy, ragged breaths. I could hear Harrison trying to whisper legal strategies, but I knew there were no strategies left. The law is a precise instrument. It does not care about your feelings. It cares about contracts. And Andre Sterling had just defaulted on the most important contract of all. As I reached the elevator, the doors opened, and a group of jurors from another trial walked out laughing about lunch. They didn't see the tragedy unfolding 10 feet away. They didn't see the man realizing that $5,000 a month was a price tag he couldn't pay. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Patricia. It is done. The lien is active. His accounts are frozen. I leaned my head back against the cool metal wall of the elevator. I pictured Lucille standing at the pharmacy counter, holding a bottle of generic pills, counting out change from her purse. It hurt. It hurt to know she was suffering. But then I remembered the way she looked at me in the hospital room, the way she called me a spare part. She wanted the Sterling lifestyle. She wanted the prestige. Now she was going to learn that prestige is expensive, but dignity is priceless. The elevator chimed at the ground floor. I walked out into the sunlight, leaving Andre in the hallway with a $500,000 debt and a mother who was about to find out exactly how much her son's love was actually worth. The collapse had started, and I was not going to be the one to catch them when they fell. The destruction of Andre was business, but the destruction of Courtney was personal. Courtney was the one who stood by my hospital bed and told me that black women were built for pain. She was the one who called me tacky for wanting to reclaim my dignity. She was the one who sat at the head table drinking wine while I bled on the street. Courtney thought she was safe because she was just an observer. She thought that because she was married to Andre's younger brother Julian, she was insulated from the fallout. She forgot that I audited Julian's books too. I sat in my car parked 2 blocks away from the bistro where Courtney was currently having a sympathy lunch with Chantel. I could see them through the window. Courtney was doing most of the talking, patting Chantel's hand, probably telling her not to worry about the frozen bank accounts, probably telling her that the Sterling men always land on their feet. Courtney was wearing a pastel cardigan and pearls, the uniform of a woman who believes she is untouchable. I pulled up Julian's file on my tablet. Julian was not the mastermind of the family. He was the follower. He worked as the vice president of operations for the Sterling Group, a title that meant he did nothing but collect a six-figure salary and play golf. But Julian had a secret that cost $5,000 a month. For the last 2 years, Julian had been expensing client retention dinners 3 times a week. But when I cross-referenced the receipts with the credit card location data, I found that these dinners were not happening at steakhouses. They were happening at a small boutique hotel in Midtown, and the client was a 22-year-old fitness instructor named Amber. I had the photos, I had the credit card statements showing purchases at Victoria's Secret and Tiffany's, but the smoking gun was the college tuition payment. Last month, Julian had wired $12,000 from the joint savings account he shared with Courtney to the bursar's office at Georgia State University. The memo line said, "Charitable donation." It was for Amber's tuition. Courtney was a woman who could perhaps forgive a physical affair. She was the type to look the other way as long as the diamonds kept coming. But Courtney would never forgive financial infidelity. She watched every dime. She was saving for a vacation home in the Hamptons. She was saving for a new Range Rover. Finding out that her husband was using her vacation money to put his mistress through college would not just break her heart. It would unleash a demon. I composed the email. I did not write a subject line. I just attached the file. It contained the hotel receipts, the jewelry store invoices, the tuition wire transfer, and a series of photos taken from the hotel lobby security feed. I looked at Courtney through the window one last time. She was laughing, sipping her iced tea. She looked so comfortable in her superiority. I pressed send. I watched. It took 30 seconds for the notification to hit her phone. I saw her glance down casually at the screen. Then I saw her freeze. She put her glass down. She picked up the phone. She swiped. She zoomed in. Her face went from confused to pale to a shade of red that clashed with her cardigan. She stood up so abruptly that her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Chantel looked up startled, asking what was wrong. Courtney did not answer. She was scrolling. Every swipe was a new purchase she hadn't authorized. Every image was a betrayal of her bank account. Then she did something beautiful. She screamed. It was muted by the glass, but I saw the other patrons turn to look. Courtney slammed her phone onto the table. She wasn't crying. She was furious. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the restaurant, leaving Chantel sitting there alone with the bill. I waited. I knew exactly what Courtney was going to do. She wasn't going to confront Julian. That was too emotional. Courtney was practical. She knew that the Sterling ship was sinking. Andre was drowning in debt. The company was being seized by the IRS. And now she knew her husband was draining their personal liquidity to pay for a student's education. If she waited, the government would freeze Julian's assets too because of his connection to the company. If she waited, there would be nothing left to take. I saw her standing on the sidewalk dialing a number. It wasn't Julian. I knew that posture. It was her lawyer. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed with an alert from the court filing system. I had set a tracker on the Sterling family names. Courtney Sterling versus Julian Sterling. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Motion for emergency asset freeze. She wasn't just divorcing him. She was freezing him out. She was filing an emergency motion to secure 50% of their marital assets before Andre's bankruptcy could touch them. She was accusing Julian of dissipation of assets, but the real damage wasn't to Julian, it was to the family alliance. Half an hour later, I received a call from Patricia. She was laughing. "Simone, what did you do?" Patricia asked. "I just forwarded some mail," I said innocently. "Well, whatever you did, it worked," Patricia said. "Courtney's lawyer just called the hospital legal team. She is offering to testify against Andre regarding the insurance fraud. She claims she knew nothing about it and wants to distance herself and Julian from the fraud charges. She is throwing Andre under the bus to save her own skin. She told them that Andre coached Lucille on what to say to the insurance adjusters. I smiled. The alliance was dead. Courtney was turning state's witness. She was going to tear the family apart to make sure she walked away with her settlement. I looked back at the bistro. Chantel was finally walking out. She looked confused and scared. She tried to call Andre, but he wasn't answering because he was currently dealing with the bank. She tried to call Courtney, but Courtney had blocked her. The circle was broken. They were all alone now, fighting each other for scraps of a fortune that didn't exist anymore. I started my car. I drove past Courtney, who was still pacing on the sidewalk, screaming into her phone. She looked at my car as I passed. For a second, our eyes met. She didn't look superior anymore. She looked terrified. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just kept driving. I had one more stop to make. One more person who needed to understand the cost of a kidney. The surgeon who had cut me open and ignored my tears because Andre had promised him a donation to his private research fund. It was time to pay the doctor a visit. The lobby of the Sterling Group headquarters was transformed into a stage for the final act of a tragedy. Andre had called the press conference at noon, claiming he was going to announce a historic partnership that would silence the rumors of his insolvency. He had set up a podium in front of the massive waterfall feature that I knew for a fact had been turned off for 3 days because the water bill was unpaid. Now it was just a dry wall of slate, a perfect metaphor for his liquidity. I stood at the back of the room behind a wall of reporters and cameras watching the performance. Andre was wearing a new suit, likely charged to a credit card that was moments away from being declined. He was sweating. It was not the glow of a man in charge. It was the oily sheen of a man who knows the walls are closing in. Next to him stood Chantel. She looked less like a fiancée and more like a hostage. Her smile was brittle. She was clutching her clutch bag with white knuckles. I knew why. She had probably tried to use the company card this morning to buy a latte and seen the error message. She knew the ship was sinking, but she was trapped in the spotlight, forced to smile, while the captain lied about the size of the iceberg. Andre leaned into the microphones, his voice booming with forced confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. There have been malicious rumors circulating about the health of the Sterling Group. These rumors are nothing more than the bitter whisperings of disgruntled former associates. We are strong. We are solvent. And today I am proud to announce that the Sterling Horizon project is fully funded and moving forward ahead of schedule." The reporters scribbled furiously. They wanted to believe him. The charisma was still there, the dazzling smile that had charmed the church ladies and the investors alike. But then a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution raised her hand. "Mr. Sterling, if you are fully funded, why have 3 contractors filed liens against this building this morning? And why has the bank frozen your operating accounts?" Andre's smile faltered. He laughed a nervous high-pitched sound. "That is just a clerical error, a misunderstanding with the new payroll system. It will be resolved by the end of the business day." "And what about the allegations of insurance fraud?" the reporter pressed. "We received a tip that your personal health policies were canceled retroactively." Andre gripped the podium so hard his knuckles turned white. "That is a private family matter. My ex-wife is a troubled woman. She is using the legal system to harass me and my sick mother. It is sad, really. She is obsessed." Chantel shifted her weight, looking at the exit signs. She wanted to run. She knew that obsessed ex-wives did not usually have the power to freeze bank accounts. She was realizing that the man she had bet on was not a king, but a jester. That was my cue. I stepped out from behind the camera crews. I was not wearing my hospital clothes anymore. I was wearing a sharp charcoal gray suit and a lanyard around my neck that identified me as a consultant for the Internal Revenue Service whistleblower office. I was flanked by 2 agents from the Financial Crimes Division. "I am not obsessed, Andre," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "I am auditing." The cameras swung around. Flashbulbs exploded. Andre looked up, shielding his eyes against the glare. When he saw me, the blood drained from his face, leaving him looking gray and old. "Security," he croaked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Get her out of here. She is trespassing." The security guards, the same ones who had thrown me out of the party, looked at the federal agent standing next to me. They did not move. They folded their arms. They knew who held the real power now. I walked down the center aisle, the reporters parting like the Red Sea. I did not look at the cameras. I kept my eyes locked on Andre. "You can stop lying to the press." Andre, I said calmly, there is no clerical error. Your accounts are frozen because at 9 a.m. this morning, I filed a formal affidavit with the IRS and the District Attorney's Office regarding the Sterling Foundation. Chantel gasped. She took a step away from Andre. She knew the foundation. That was where her checks came from. Andre tried to speak, but his voice failed him. He looked at Chantel, then at me, then at the exit. You want to tell them about the clerical error, Andre, I asked, stopping 10 feet from the podium. Or should I tell them about the Hope for Hearts charity, the one you set up to fund kidney research for underprivileged families? I turned to the cameras holding up a file. This man raised $2 million from the congregation of Greater Ebenezer Baptist Church. He told them their donations were going to save lives. He told grandmothers on fixed incomes to give their widows' mites. And where did that money go? I opened the file. Did it go to research? No. Did it go to patients? No. It went to a shell company in the Cayman Islands called Miller Consulting. And from there, it went to pay for a penthouse lease, a Bentley, and a diamond engagement ring currently worn by Ms. Tiffany Miller, also known as Chantel. The room erupted. The room. Reporters were shouting questions. Cameras were zooming in on the ring on Chantel's finger. Chantel looked down at her hand as if the diamond had suddenly turned into a burning coal. She ripped the ring off her finger and threw it at Andre. It bounced off his chest and clattered onto the stage. I did not know she screamed, her voice shrill and terrified. I did not know it was church money. He told me he was a developer. I am a victim here too. She tried to run off the stage, but one of the agents stepped forward, blocking her path. Ms. Miller, we have some questions about the tax returns you failed to file for the last 4 years. Please stay where you are. Andre looked at me. His eyes were wet. He looked small. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing from the collection plate. Why are you doing this, Simone? He whispered the microphone, picking up his broken voice. I am your husband. I shook my head slowly. You were my husband when I was paying your debts, Andre. You were my husband when I was fixing your tax returns in the middle of the night. But when you cut me open and left me for dead, you filed for a different status. You made me an adversary. And you forgot the one rule of accounting. I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper that silenced the room. You can lie to your mother. You can lie to your mistress. You can even lie to God. But you never ever lie to the IRS. I nodded to the agents. Andre Sterling, I said, my voice ringing with finality. You are being served with a notice of seizure for all assets, personal and professional, under the RICO Act for money laundering, wire fraud, and embezzlement. The party is over, Andre, and you are the one picking up the tab. Andre slumped against the podium, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor. He buried his face in his hands, sobbing. It wasn't a cry of remorse. It was the cry of a narcissist who had lost his audience. The cameras captured every second of it. The golden boy of Atlanta, the man who preached about loyalty and legacy, was reduced to a weeping mess on a stage he couldn't afford to rent. I turned my back on him. I didn't need to see the handcuffs. I knew they were coming. I looked at Chantel, who was crying and pleading with the agent, trying to bargain her way out. I looked at the reporters who were typing the headline that would destroy the Sterling name forever. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. The pain in my side was gone. The scar was still there, but it didn't hurt anymore. It was just a mark, a line in the ledger that had finally been balanced. I walked out of the building into the bright Atlanta sunshine, leaving the chaos behind me. I had a lunch date with Patricia, and for the first time in 7 years, I was going to order exactly what I wanted, and I was going to pay with my own money. The agents were moving in, flanking Andre like wolves circling a wounded deer. He was backing away, his hands raised in a futile gesture of surrender, but his eyes were locked on me. Even in the middle of his destruction, he could not let go of the narrative he had constructed. He needed to be the victim. He needed me to be the villain. He lunged forward, straining against the agent who grabbed his arm. "You are sick, Simone," he screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "You are doing this because you regret it. You regret giving up your kidney. You want it back, right? That is what this is about. You are jealous that a part of you is living inside my mother. You think that gives you you ownership over us. Well, guess what? You can't repo a kidney. It is done. My mother is walking around with your flesh in her body. You are tied to us forever, whether you like it or not. So go ahead, send me to jail. But every time you close your eyes, you will know that you are literally a part of the Sterling family." The lobby went silent. The reporters lowered their cameras, sensing a moment of raw, unfiltered drama. Andre was panting, a triumphant sneer curling his lip. He thought he had played his trump card. He thought he had used my own body as a hostage. I looked at him. I did not feel the anger I expected. I felt a strange, calm amusement. It was the feeling of watching a child cheat at a game they did not even understand the rules of. I let a small, dry laugh escape my lips. It echoed in the quiet room. Andre looked confused. "Why are you laughing?" I walked closer to him, stopping just outside of his reach. "I am laughing because for a man who claims to be a detail-oriented CEO, you really never read the fine print, did you, Andre?" I tilted my head, looking him up and down. "You think your mother has my kidney. You think the organ inside Lucille Sterling right now came from my body." Andre blinked. "Of course it did. We were there. We went to the surgery together." I shook my head slowly. "No, Andre. We went to the hospital together. We went into the operating rooms at the same time. But you never bothered to read the surgical protocol, did you? You were too busy texting Chantel. You were too busy planning your victory party." I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a shout. "My kidney was not a match for Lucille." Andre froze. The color drained from his face. "What?" "My blood type was compatible," I explained, speaking slowly as if to a toddler. "But my antibody profile was not. If the doctors had put my kidney into your mother, her body would have attacked it within hours. She would have died on the table." "But—" Andre stammered, looking around wildly as if the truth could be found on the faces of the reporters. "But the surgery happened. She has a kidney." "Yes, she does," I said. "But it is not mine." I paused, letting the suspense hang in the air like a guillotine blade. "We participated in the National Kidney Registry's paired exchange program, Andre. It is a swap. A chain. I gave my kidney to a stranger on the waiting list who was a match for me, and in exchange a donor from that stranger's family gave their kidney to Lucille." I saw the realization hit him. The horror. The loss of his last piece of leverage. So you are not—" he whispered, pointing at his chest. "No," I said. "I am not inside your mother. I have no biological tie to you or your family. I am completely and totally free." Andre looked like he was going to be sick. But then a flicker of hope crossed his face, a desperate, pathetic hope. "So what? It doesn't matter. You still donated. You still signed the papers. You are still the sponsor." I smiled. And this was the moment I had been waiting for since I woke up in the recovery room. "That is where you are wrong, Andre, because in a paired exchange chain, the sponsorship follows the donor, not the recipient. My financial guarantee, the one I signed to cover the anti-rejection drugs, was conditional on my kidney being part of the swap." I pulled a document from my inside pocket. It was the termination letter I had drafted with Patricia. "Since I am the donor who initiated the chain, I hold the power. I have the right to withdraw my financial sponsorship if the terms of the exchange are violated." "And fraud, Andre, is a violation." I leaned in closer. "But here's the best part. You should really know who got my kidney." Andre stared at me, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly. "My kidney went to a 55-year-old man who had been on the waiting list for 4 years," I said. "He was dying, Andre. He had lost hope. And then I came along. My kidney was a perfect match. He is recovering beautifully, by the way. He is very strong, he is very smart, and he is very grateful." I checked my watch. "He is actually quite upset right now. You see, I visited him yesterday. I told him about you. I told him how you tricked me. I told him how you used his life-saving surgery as a cover for insurance fraud. I told him how you tried to bankrupt the woman who saved his life." "Who is he?" Andre whispered. He sounded terrified. I smiled. "His name is Marcus Thorne." Andre's knees buckled. The agent had to hold him up. "Judge Marcus Thorne." Andre gasped. "The very same," I said. the senior federal judge for the Northern District of Georgia, the man known as the Hammer because he has never given a white-collar criminal a sentence of less than 20 years. The room gasped. The reporters started typing frantically. "You gave a kidney to a federal judge?" Andre screamed, his voice high and shrill. "I did," I replied calmly. "And let me tell you, Andre, he takes it very personally when someone tries to scam his donor. He considers it an attack on his own body." I pointed to the agents holding him. "Who do you think signed the warrant for your arrest this morning, Andre?" It wasn't just a clerk. It was Judge Thorne himself. He signed it from his hospital bed. He is personally overseeing the case. He wants to make sure that justice is served. Andre looked at the agents. They nodded grimly. "You are finished, Andre. You are not just fighting a forensic accountant anymore. You are not just fighting the IRS. You are fighting the man who has my DNA running through his veins. The man who wakes up every morning because of me. And he is going to make sure that you never see the outside of a prison cell again." I turned to the cameras one last time. "Lucille has a stranger's kidney," I said to the world. "And that stranger has no obligation to pay for her pills. That falls to her son. But since her son is going to federal prison, I suggest she start looking for a charity." Oh wait, he stole from the charity too. I looked back at Andre. He was slumped in the grip of the agents, a broken man realizing that he had not just burned a bridge, he had bombed the only road home. "Take him away, boys," I said softly. "The judge is waiting," as they dragged him out screaming and crying, begging for mercy. I stood in the silence of the lobby. I felt lighter than air. The twist wasn't that I took the kidney back. The twist was that I gave it to the one person in the world who had the power to make Andre pay for every single sin. I touched the scar on my side. It wasn't a loss. It was an investment. And the return on investment was absolute justice. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut is a very specific noise. It is metallic and final. It cuts through the noise of flashing cameras and shouting reporters like a knife. I stood there and watched as two federal agents pulled Andre's arms behind his back. He was not shouting anymore. He was not fighting. He was just sagging against them. His expensive suit crumpled his face wet with tears and snot. He looked at me one last time before they shoved him into the back of the cruiser. His eyes were wide and terrified, asking a question I had already answered. He wanted to know if I would save him. He wanted the wife who fixed his messes to step in and make the bad men go away. But that wife died on the operating table. The woman standing on the steps of the Sterling Group headquarters was just a witness. I looked around for Chantel. I wanted to see if the love of his life would run to the car window. I wanted to see if she would promise to wait for him. But Chantel was gone. The moment the first agent had flashed his badge, she had slipped out a side exit. She did not even look back. She left her engagement ring on the floor of the stage and disappeared into the Atlanta traffic. I heard later that she took a flight to Miami that same afternoon, using a credit card she stole from Andre's wallet before the freeze hit. That was the thing about rented loyalty. As soon as the lease expires, the tenant vacates the premises. The fall of the House of Sterling was fast and brutal. It did not take years. It took weeks. With Andre in federal custody awaiting trial for wire fraud and money laundering, the banks moved in like vultures. They foreclosed on everything. The penthouse at Sterling Heights, where I had packed my life into trash bags, was seized. The Gilded Lily event space was boarded up. The construction site for the Sterling Horizon remained a hole in the ground, a muddy monument to his hubris. But the hardest fall belonged to Lucille. 2 months after the arrest, I drove past the old family home. It was a beautiful colonial house in Buckhead, the one Lucille had sworn she would never leave. There was a sign on the lawn, "Auction today." I parked my car and watched from across the street. I saw the movers carrying out the antique furniture, the velvet sofas, and the grand piano she used to play during her holiday parties. Lucille was sitting on the front porch in a folding chair. She looked small. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a bewildered fragility. She was holding a bottle of pills, generic tacrolimus, the cheap kind, the kind she had sneered at. Because Andre's assets were frozen and then seized for restitution, there was no money left for her private care. There was no money for the VIP doctors. The state stepped in. They moved her to a publicly funded assisted living facility on the south side of the city. It was a clean place, but it was crowded. She had to share a room with a woman who watched game shows at full volume all day. The food was cafeteria grade. The sheets were polyester. I visited her once, not to gloat, but to sign the final papers removing my name from the last of the joint accounts. She was sitting in the common room staring at a television she did not control. When she saw me, she did not yell. She did not call me names. She just looked at my stomach. "Does it hurt?" she asked, her voice thin and raspy. "No, Lucille," I said. "It does not hurt anymore." "My back hurts," she whispered. "This mattress is lumpy, and the medicine makes me nauseous. I miss my house, Simone. I miss my son. Why did you let them take him?" "You let them take him, Lucille," I said gently. "You raised him to believe he was a king who did not have to follow the rules. You enjoyed the fruit of the poisonous tree. Now you have to live with the indigestion." I left her there sitting in the gray light of a community room waiting for a dinner tray that would never be good enough for her. She had the kidney she wanted. She had life. But it was a life stripped of every single thing she valued. She was alive, but she was no longer Lucille Sterling, the matriarch. She was just another number in the system. As for the company, the Sterling Group filed for Chapter 11, bankruptcy. The assets were liquidated to pay off the creditors. But there was one asset that no one else wanted: the intellectual property, the client lists, the proprietary software I had built, the brand name itself. When the auction came up, I was the only bidder. I bought the controlling stake of the company for pennies on the dollar. I used the money I had saved in my secret account, the Freedom Fund I had started the day I found out about Chantel. I walked into the boardroom, the same room where Andre used to silence me, and I sat at the head of the table. I fired the sycophants. I rehired the honest employees Andre had let go. I rebranded. It is no longer the Sterling Group. It is Mitchell Financial Forensics. My name, my legacy. I own the building now. I own the desk Andre used to sit behind. And in a twist of irony that I enjoy every single day, I hired Julian's ex-wife, Courtney, as my office manager. After she turned state's witness and divorced Julian, she needed a job. She is terrified of me. She brings me coffee exactly the way I like it, and she never ever makes a joke about black women and pain tolerance. She learned that lesson the hard way. The final scene of this chapter happened yesterday. I was driving my new car, a vintage convertible with the top down along the highway that runs past Mount Sinai Hospital. The air was crisp and cool, the kind of autumn day that makes you glad to be alive. I looked up at the glass tower where I had been cut open. I looked at the window of the VIP suite where I had been discarded. For a long time, I could not drive down this street without having a panic attack. I used to feel the ghost of the knife slicing through me, but today the sun was shining on my face. I pulled the car over to the shoulder. I turned off the engine. I placed my hand on my right side, pressing firmly against the silk of my blouse. Underneath the fabric, I could feel the ridge of the scar. It is thick. It is ugly. It runs from my rib cage down to my hip. I traced the length of it with my fingers. Andre was right about one thing. I am changed forever. I am missing a part of myself. But he was wrong about what that missing part represents. It is not a deficit. It is a payment. I paid a high price for my freedom. I paid with my flesh and blood. But looking at where I am now sitting in a car, I bought with my own money running a company I own outright free from the lies and the gaslighting and the manipulation. I know one thing for sure. It was a bargain. I started the car, the engine roaring to life. I merged back into traffic, leaving the hospital in my rearview mirror. I did not look back. I had a meeting with Judge Thorne. We were going to lunch to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of our exchange. He calls me his kidney sister. I call him Your Honor. And Andre Sterling calls his lawyer from a payphone in a federal penitentiary, begging for an appeal that is never going to come. My name is Simone Mitchell. I am 35 years old. I have 1 kidney. I have 0 debts. And I have the rest of my life to enjoy the view. If you are watching this and you feel like you are being used, if you feel like your sacrifice is being taken for granted, I want you to look at my story. Do not wait until they cut you open to find your voice. Check the bank accounts. Trust your gut. And remember that the only person who deserves your whole heart is the one who would never ask you to break it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share this story with a woman who needs to hear it. You might just save her life. Stay strong, stay smart, and never let them tell you that your silence is a virtue. My silence was my weapon, and my revenge was loud. The biggest lie we are told as women is that unconditional love means unconditional tolerance. We are taught that if we sacrifice enough, if we bleed enough, if we give pieces of our bodies and our bank accounts, we will finally earn our place at the table. But my story proves that to a narcissist, your sacrifice isn't a gift. It is a supply, and supplies are used until they run out. Then they are discarded for a newer model. I learned that you cannot audit a heart, but you can certainly audit a lifestyle. The moment I stopped being Andre's financial safety net, I became his enemy. That is the ultimate red flag. Real love does not ask for collateral. Real love does not require a down payment of your dignity or your internal organs. The most expensive thing I ever bought was my freedom, and it cost me a kidney. But looking back, I realized that keeping my self-respect was the only asset that actually appreciated in value. The takeaway is simple. Never let your loyalty become your liability. In a world that wants you to be a martyr, be a CEO of your own life instead. Always keep a separate bank account, always keep the receipts, and never be afraid to be the villain in a story written by a liar. Because the only thing worse than being alone is being with someone who makes you feel lonely. If this story set a fire in your spirit, or if you are currently sitting in a relationship where the math doesn't add up, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with a friend who needs to hear that her silence isn't saving her, it is erasing her. Let's build a community of women who know their worth plus tax. I will see you in the comments.